Good evening. My name is Suzanne Giffen, and this is the webinar for Who is Robert and What are his rules, how to run effective meetings. I will be your technical producer for this evening, and Denise Rogani will be the presenter. And without further ado, I will turn this over to Denise Rogani.
Great. Thank you so much, Suzanne. Thank you all for being here. And again, this is a webinar on Robert's Rules of Order and how to run effective meetings. Again, my name is Denise Rogani, and I'm currently the Fraternity Bylaws Chairman. And Suzanne Giffen is our producer for this webinar. So the outcomes of the webinar are to understand the purpose of parliamentary procedure, to learn to respect the use of it, and to help you all feel comfortable with presiding at meetings, as well as learning some helpful tips to run a smooth and efficient meetings. So why is it important to use parliamentary procedure? What parliamentary procedure does is it provides a framework for your meetings. It helps keep the meetings moving along and more efficient. It provides due process for all members so that everyone is on the equal ground. So it truly equals the playing field, and it really makes sure that everybody has a voice in the process. It keeps the discussion focused and purposeful. It keeps the rules the same for all members. It prevents illegal actions. It provides clarity rather than vagueness. And as I put at the bottom here, see Model Chapter Bylaws, basically in our documents, it states that that is the form of parliamentary procedure we'll use. We will follow Robert's Rules. So what are some of the basic principles or tenets of parliamentary procedure? It exists to facilitate the transition of business and to promote cooperation and harmony. So basically what it does is it makes sure that as we're running meetings and what we're doing when we're conducting the business of our chapters is that it's fair. It is a set of rules that allows all participants in a meeting to be heard with dignity and respect. So each of the members, their points should be listened to, and we want to make sure that we're treating each other with dignity and respect and allowing them to be heard. It gives all members equal rights, privileges, and obligations. So every member, basically, it states, has the right to speak and a right to share their opinion. The majority have the right to decide, and the minority rights must be protected. So our decisions are based, obviously, on the majority vote, so that the majority can decide a decision, but those that are in disagreement or have other opinions, the minority, they have the right, their rights are to be protected and their rights are to be heard. Quorum must be present for the group to act, and again, it allows for free and full discussion of every motion before it's considered. So that's another basic right, is that people are allowed to discuss and be heard before a decision is made. Other basic principles are only one question can be considered at any time, so that means only one motion can be on the floor. So basically, everybody understands what is being talked about and what is going to be voted on. Members have the right to know what is immediately pending, what the question is. So again, as I stated before, so members have the right to know what they are voting on. And if they don't understand it, they can ask for the motion to be restated before the vote is taken. No member speaks unless it's recognized by the chairman, and that really helps keep the order so that people aren't just calling out or giving opinions. And no member may speak a second time on the first question, on the same question, as long as another wants to speak on the first time. So again, what this does is it equals the playing field. It prevents one or two people from monopolizing a conversation, because what's important is that everybody has a voice. And so thus, one of the basic tenets is that everybody speaks once, and then if there's others that want to say something else to add to the discussion, not repeat what was already said, they can do so. The chairman should be strictly impartial, so always usually whoever's running the meeting, normally the president, they need to be impartial. Their goal is to run an efficient meeting. And once the rules and procedures have been agreed upon and established by an organization, they are to be followed to the letter of the law. And again, that's in our chapter bylaws. So who is the chairman? And this is something that's really important to understand and know, because it's the chairman who truly is running the meeting. So For chapter meetings, it's the president most of the time. The chairman is the president. Standards meetings, the chairman is the vice president of standards. Membership selection, the chairman is usually the membership chairman. House board meetings, it's the House board president, and advisory board meetings, it's usually the ABC, the advisory board chairman. The reason for this is with Robert's rules, it's the chairman who basically keeps the meeting moving and running efficiently. And it's the chairman who truly needs to understand the workings of parliamentary procedure. Another component that I talked about earlier, one of the tenets, was quorum. And in our chapters, quorum for chapter meetings is a simple majority. So that's 51%. So in order to pass a vote, you have to have a majority, meaning 51% of your chapter members there, present and voting, unless it's otherwise stated. So for instance, below, if you're going to vote on chapter bylaws and standing rules, it says you must have a 2/3 of a vote. But otherwise, usually it's 51% to pass. You must have quorum in order to take any action. So that would be just like taking a vote at a standards meeting. You have to have a quorum present in order to do that. So what we're going to do now is just kind of briefly go over a format of, it's just a chapter council agenda, and then our chapter agenda, and then we'll go into more specifics. So if we're just looking at an agenda itself, the first thing that the chairman does and the president does is call to order. So they just make sure that they say the meetings come to order. You usually approve the agenda, and you can approve it as the agenda is written or as posted. It doesn't matter. And that's a motion. You do the roll call, you approve the minutes from the last meeting, and then you do officer reports. The next comes, you have the committee chairman reports, and then the special committee chairman reports. And then it goes into unfinished business, which is basically any motion report that was considered that was interrupted in a previous meeting. It could be a motion or report that was postponed. Maybe it was tabled because people didn't feel comfortable and you had to get more information. Or it could be something like items that you present one week and then you vote on another week. So that could be like if you're making any changes to your chapter bylaws or standing rules. Then there's new business, so that's any member that they want to bring to the assembly, and that that could be almost anything that they want to do. They can bring up under new business if it's something they didn't do in their reports, but they have it. They want to bring up for a vote or a decision. The last part of the meeting is the announcements. And they put here, the chairman should know ahead of time what the announcements are, just to save time so that you can move through them quickly. But otherwise, that is the time for announcements. If someone forgets to say something, they're able to speak up then and just give a quick announcement. And then there's the adjournment. And the decision to adjourn is made by the presiding officer, is made by the members. So basically what happens is the presiding officer just asks and says, which would, the chapter president would say, is there any further business? If the president doesn't hear any, the chairman doesn't hear, then she would say, hearing no objection, the meeting is adjourned. So that's what's important, is that the chairman is really the facilitator of the meeting in one sense. It's the members and the membership body that basically state that they're done with the meeting and then that we can adjourn the meeting. So what we're going to do is go through steps of a motion in words, and then I have a chart that basically shows clearly what the words are and who says each of them. So the purpose of a motion is to introduce new items, basically to the membership for consideration. So a member is the person who makes a motion, and motions are always positive, and it has to come from the membership. The chairman cannot make the motion. The chairman can ask for a motion, but they don't make them. Then another member would second the motion, and then the chairman would state the question on the motion. Members then debate the motion, and then the chairman puts the question to a vote. So all those in favor say aye, all those opposed no. And the way this starts is that usually it comes from a goal or duty or a problem that needs to be solved. Standing committees usually formalize a plan of action to solve the problem. And then in chapter council, they usually consider it. And the idea is to vote to bring it forward to the chapter to approve it. Or sometimes in chapter council, they would say, you know what, there needs to be further thought to this, so go back to your committee for further review. If the idea is that it needs to come back to the chapter, then the chapter officer is ready to present her recommendations in the form of a motion to the chapter meeting. At the chapter meeting, it's where the members then vote on whatever the idea is. You know, they want to vote on a shirt, they want to vote on whether they're going to have 1 or 2 philanthropies that semester. That then comes to the chapter meeting. And the chapter members have basically, they can either adopt the motion, reject the motion, you can adopt some of the motion and reject other parts, so you can amend it by changing the words, stating that the main motion was to have 2 philanthropies this semester. You could change it to saying that I would like to have 1 philanthropy this semester and 1 philanthropy next semester. So in some ways you are adopting the motion with some amendments to it. This is just a quote from Thomas Jefferson. It just reminds everybody about the dignity and respect, and that it's important to listen to everybody in meetings so that you hear everybody's voice. So how are motions presented? So when a motion is presented, a member would stand up and say, Madam President, I move that we have 2 philanthropies this semester. Another member would second it. If there is no second to a motion, the motion dies. So many times people will just second so that there's discussion. But other times if people are all against it and they understand parliamentary procedure, if someone brings up a motion to be voted on and no one agrees with it, if there is no second, the motion goes away. Then what the chairman does is they repeat the motion and ask for discussion. So there's a motion on the table. There's a motion and a second on the table to have 2 philanthropies this semester. Is there any discussion? And then they go through discussion, and then at the end of the discussion, after making sure that there's no further discussion, the chairman asks for if people are ready to vote. So here is where I'm going to go through the exact language that's used. So the chairman, when she calls the meeting to order, she basically, the words that she uses are, the meeting will come to order. A member who addresses the floor, if they're going to address the president, basically the member would say, Madam President and chapter. Some say Madam President and sister, some just say Madam President. All of those will work. It's just whatever is tradition within your chapter. After the member makes the motion, then the chairman will ask for a second. So the president usually would say, is there a second to the motion? Most of the time someone will say, I second. Then, so someone from the membership would say, I second the motion. Then the chairman again says, it is moved and seconded that we, again, I'll use the same example, that we have 2 philanthropies this semester and work at a homeless shelter. Then the chairman says, is there any discussion? At that time, during the discussion session, is when the chairman asks and basically listens to the discussion. And again, going back to the rules of Robert's rules, what she should do is make sure she picks or chooses, when she's asking for discussion, individuals that speak once. So basically, if I'm out there in the membership and I speak my point on the motion, and then all of a sudden I forget, and so then I raise my hand again to speak again, I don't speak a second time until everybody's had a first time to speak. And that, again, is where we keep the fairness, we keep the equity of the meeting in place so that one person or two people are not monopolizing the conversation and pushing their one point of view. Once the discussion is completed, again, the chairman would say, is there any further discussion? Hearing none, then she would repeat the motion and ask for a vote. And there are different ways to vote. So obviously, if you're going to do a voice vote in formal meetings, the chairman would say, president would say, all those in favor, say kappa, all those opposed, gamma. If you're doing a voice vote in other meetings, it's all those in favor, aye. If you say aye, all those opposed, no. And then she would say, well, who has it or doesn't. If it's a rising vote, because you want to, for two reasons. One, you can't tell by the voices how many are for or how many are against, so you need to see it. You can ask for a rising vote. It can also be used if you truly want to see where is the support for the motion or non-support. So for a rising vote or a standing vote, all those in favor, please stand. You ask them to stand, and you ask them, then please be seated. So they sit down. Then all those opposed, please stand, and those individuals stand. You can also show hands or cards, and I know this is a lot of times done during membership selection, but you also can do it in chapter meetings. All those in favor, you can raise your hand or raise a green card. All those opposed, raise your hand or raise red card. There are also times when you want to have a ballot vote. So that's usually used when you don't secrecy. So you basically don't want anybody to know how each other is voting. And of course, you know, that is always done during elections and a preference for membership. So what's important is that it's usually done when truly you do not want to know how each other are voting. When all the votes are cast, however it's done, then the chairman will ask, basically announce the vote. And she would say the ayes have it and the motion is adopted, or the nays have it and the motion is lost. So that everybody understands now, was the motion adopted that was on the floor, or was it not? So those are the areas. That's basically the language that's used. And so this part here is just really how to maintain order during the meeting. And again, just to remind everybody that it's the chairman that presides at the meeting. So she's really the person that's in charge of the meeting. And so it's up to her to make sure that the discussion pertains to the motion on the table. So if someone starts to talk out of turn, it's the chairman who needs to say, I'm sorry, we need to, that is not, you know, is this pertaining to the motion on the floor? And ask that question. And obviously, if it's not, the person will say no, and then the chairman just reminds everybody the motion on the table is this, on the floor is this, and this is what we're going to talk about right now. If things get loud or out of control, again, the chairman can use the gavel to call the meeting to order, or the chairman can just stop talking. Because again, it's the chairman who has the control of the meeting. If the chairman wants to speak to any topics, she needs to turn it over to the VPS, so the Vice President of Standards. So if the president wants to speak, she needs to turn it over to the Vice President of Standards. If the membership chairman wants to speak, they need to turn it over to another officer. So when you're usually running a meeting, you should not be also participating in the discussion. The marshal also helps keep order and decorum, and so, but it's the chairman who should control the meeting. So marshals may call for the question and realize that this is going on, and everything that's been said, everybody's been heard, and now we're on the second or third time people are speaking, and so marshals can help maintain the order by just calling for the question. And that what that does is it ends the discussion and it moves the motion to a vote. the marshal also can help by supporting the chairman or the president by asking people to be quiet, although it's much easier done by the chairman because that person has the gavel. There are a couple of points of order that I want to go over, and I just picked three because, again, what I feel the purpose of this webinar is to really start slow and use the basic principles of parliamentary procedure in a chapter meeting, and so these are some of the basic points of order that can be used, so not to confuse everybody and really keep the meetings running smoothly and efficiently. So the first one is just called a point of order. And what that is a question about the process or objection and suggestion of an alternative process. So my example is something that happened at my workplace, and that was where a group was actually trying to, was part of this healthcare meeting, and they actually were trying to push something through. And so they brought up a motion, and there was a motion on the floor, and they realized that people had some issues with it, and so they literally on the floor changed the motion, and you can't do that. So the chair just changed it. And so I said, point of order, isn't there currently a motion on the floor? And what that did, and this is how parliamentary procedure is extremely powerful, because I rarely speak at these meetings, and when I said that, first off, they realized I know parliamentary procedure, and secondly, they realized they couldn't just push something through that many people were not okay with. So that's what a point of order is. It's a question about the process alone. And it could be a suggestion. It could be, maybe we need to vote on this motion, or we need to vote on what's on the floor and then maybe amend it. So you can talk about suggestions or alternatives, but it has to be, that's where you're just questioning the process. That's the important part of a point of order. Point of information is, again, where you have a question about what the information of the motion, what are you actually voting on? So I put here, are we voting on two philanthropies or one? So you're actually making sure that you understand exactly what the motion on the floor is. And the third one is a point of personal privilege. And that's just where you raise and just say, Madam President or Madam Chairman, I move to a point of personal privilege. And that is usually where you see something's going on your phone, you see, oh my gosh, this is, my dad's calling and I need to make sure I get this, he's doing something. So you point of personal privilege, you leave the room. Or you need to use the restroom. So it's something you personally have to do that you need to be right in the middle of this discussion. You need to remove yourself from the meeting. So to conclude, it's really reviewing again, why is parliamentary procedure helpful? And truly, one of the biggest things is that it helps take the emotion out of the process. So everybody's able to speak, but when people get raised they can still speak and give their point, and they can be very passionate about what they believe in, but everybody's able to share their feelings. And you keep the process moving, you're not going to have kind of chaos at a meeting. It also allows for efficient meetings, which we talked about, because we stay on point, and it protects the rights of each individual member, and that is huge. So everyone's allowed to speak. People are treated with dignity and respect. It levels the playing field, and it makes sure that the majority of members that are present are making the decision. So a decision is not made by a minority of membership. I put an example of like the negotiations on here. So when there's a small group, as a chief negotiator for our district, when we're dealing with a small group of people at the table, it's up and important that the members, the entire members, bring up, wait a minute, what do we want to do and how do we want to vote on, how much money we're going to receive or the benefits that we're going to receive. And so it's not just going to be a small group of people that make that decision for the group. Okay, I just want to thank everyone for listening to this webinar. And if you have any questions after listening to the webinar, feel free to call me or email me at drivani@earthlink.net. I do live in California, but I do check my email every day and night, so usually my responses are within a 24-hour period. And again, if it's something that's extremely important, you're in the middle of something, don't hesitate to call or text me at 925-586-4619. Again, thank you.
Thank you, Denise, for presenting this session this evening, and thank you for your participation. And the rest of you, if you have any questions or comments, please don't hesitate to contact Denise at the information that she has provided. Thank you for attending this evening, and good evening.